You're listening to BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good afternoon. This is Frida Liu, and it's time for Tech Talk. And with me today is Tim Pierson, President, Data Century Inc. He has been a technical trainer for the past 23 years and is an industry leader in both security and virtualization. He has been a notable speaker at many industry events, including Novell's BrainShare, Initech, and many military venues, including the Pentagon and numerous nuclear facilities, addressing security both in the U.S. and Europe. He's contributed to secure coding best practices and co-author of Global Knowledge Windows 2000 Backup. And today we're going to talk about cloud computing and what it means for hackers. Now, cloud computing is ranked pretty high in the list of cyber threats today. Would you mind telling us about why cloud computing presents such security vulnerabilities?
Well, basically, a lot of people think that there's this new thing that's called cloud. Oh, and we've got to be really scared of this new thing called cloud. Well, in reality, we've been using cloud for years. If you've used Google Docs, if you've used Gmail, or you used anything that's really on the web, you've been using cloud. The biggest problem is, just like anything on the internet, cloud is no exception. What you put on it, what you put on the internet is what I'm talking about. You'll never be able to get it back off. Oftentimes, people put things as pranks, on Facebook, where people write on people's faces, when they're drunk. And, what most people don't understand is that later on in life, if your boss sees this or you're trying to get a job, that's not going to look all so well. My point is that previously you could say, oh, well, I never did that. But now it's really hard to say you didn't do it when there's a picture of it right there on the web. The cloud is becoming so ubiquitous, it's basically everywhere. It's the storage mechanism, it's the computing mechanism for our entertainment, for business, and everything else that we do. It basically completely surrounds our daily lives.
In a way, the cloud is more secure. It's just the user that needs to be reined in.
Well, I'm going to answer yes and no. To the first part of it, yes, the user needs to understand what he's putting on the cloud. I did a television interview for the Today Show down in Miami, and during the show, the one lady, very beautiful lady, was showing some pictures of our kids and that type of stuff. And during my segment, I showed her how you could locate where that picture was taken. And her face just turned white because she had this stalker that had been stalking her. And she had posted online her pictures. Oh. And I pulled up online and I said, is that where you live? And she said, oh my God. Yes, that's where I live. And so in other words, if the stalker had that information, he too would be able to know where she lived. So a lot of people just simply don't think about when they do something. I guess what my point is we need to approach things with better understanding of what can and cannot happen in today's technology world.
Now, if we're going to turn that to businesses moving to the cloud, would it be safe to say their concerns exaggerated if they take all these things into consideration?
No, not at all. There is an acronym that most security technologists use. It's called TNO. That stands for Trust No One. Basically, you are giving your everything, all of your information for your company to somebody maybe you've never even met. Are they doing the right thing with it? Are they storing it in a location that's safe? And more importantly, if it's something that we want to make sure stays on a particular country's soil. For example, let me give you an example. In Europe, the privacy laws are extremely strict, meaning that I can't just find out John Smith and look up his medical history. In the U.S., for that matter, it's about the same. Mm-hmm. But in Europe, it's extremely strict. Now, if I'm storing information, let's say of a medical nature, if we're going to use that example, and I'm storing it in Europe, well, that would be probably fine. But if I'm also making a backup and replicating that over to the States, maybe not so good, because we're not really following the policy of the people that are actually we've entrusted our data to. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. Now, one of your solutions for this is virtualization security. Now, what is that and how does that work?
Okay. I've actually am the contributing author to a book on virtualization security. Virtualization security basically means understanding what is going on and who has access to what. All right? I made the statement at one time to VMware chagrin that if you install VMware taking all the defaults, I'll be in your system in less than 5 minutes. And, they didn't really take too kindly to that answer. But in reality, they're storing everything all on the same network. If I have access to the same network it's being stored on, then I can do a number of different techniques. And I'm not sure how technical your audience is or how technical you want me to get, but I can do a redirection with an ARP cache poison or a DNS redirection or things of that nature to basically redirect the information back over to me if I'm on that same network. And it basically is they're not crossing the T's or dotting the I's. I just recently did a 15-city tour for VMware themselves. And part of the tour, just kind of as a byproduct, I was told by my boss that I could show them some security stuff. But they told me, this has to be after hours, this is not part of the class. But it was amazing that these very high-ranking engineers were surprised at some of the stuff I was showing them. And I would tell them over and over, guys, you really should not be surprised at what I'm showing you here. Because we're just taking things way too lax. We're not taking things seriously enough. And consequently, things can get broken into. Now, I'm not saying that the cloud is any more secure or less secure than our standard systems. It's just different. Just because, and we need to understand that difference. Most of the time, let's take, for example, when you, and I'm not sure how technical you are, let's say, for example, we installed Active Directory a long time ago, way back when. If anything happened in our office, Active Directory got the blame for it. If the computer wouldn't boot up, it's that Active Directory. I know it's that Active Directory. When Active Directory had nothing to do with it. Basically, my point is that if people don't understand what's going on, that's typically what gets the blame for it. So my bottom line is that we need to understand how the cloud works, what's safe to put in the cloud, and the proper ways to secure it.
All right. I'm here with Tim Pierson, the president for Data Century Inc., and we'll continue our discussion about other safeguards and the level of awareness in just a moment. Tech Talk, BFM 89.9. This is Tech Talk on Enterprise. I'm Frida Liu, and I'm here with Tim Pierson, president of Data Century Inc., and we're discussing some of the security risks in cloud computing. What other is there enough awareness about cloud computing when it comes to users and businesses, and what other safeguard measures can be applied?
To answer your first question, in a word, no. What safeguards can be applied? Education. That's in a nutshell, I can't say it any better than that. Most of the time, people don't understand where you're putting your data. Let's use, for example, the U.S. government. Most businesses know in order to have a secure backup, we need to have that backup stored three different ways. We need to have two backups. One, the storage itself. Another one that's a backup of it. It could be, on a tape, or it could be on a hard drive. And a third one needs to be kept off-site somewhere. If we have all three of those things done, we're beginning to have a pretty good, safe backup. Now, let's compare that to the cloud. In the cloud, what the cloud does is they replicate their storage in many different locations for fault tolerance. Fault tolerance and for backup. So let's say, for example, the U.S. government decides that, I want to start storing some of my records of some military personnel in the cloud. Okay, great. They store it in the cloud, and it's replicated, let's say, in Washington, D.C., and it's also replicated in Chicago. But the Internet service provider forgot to tell Uncle Sam that, oh, by the way, we also replicated this to Canada. Okay, because they needed to be fault tolerant. They needed to have those three places of replication. Now, I would venture to say Uncle Sam would not sit still knowing that their data was on another person's soil. That's just an example of people not understanding what actually is going on. Yes, they are fault tolerant. Would something happen? Couldn't tell you. But I tell you one thing, most governments want to have control of their data on their own soil. They don't want it replicated, even if it's more fault tolerant, to another company's, or I should say company, another country's location where they may not have jurisdiction to go get it. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. Okay, what about the level of sophistication of hackers? Are they very, very sophisticated?
No. They're getting more and more sophisticated all the time. And to tell you the truth, it's not just the hackers. It's also state-sponsored hackers, all right, where there's been things that have been uncovered, and I never like to point names. A lot of people will say, oh, well, it's China that's doing this. And I'll always hold my audience, well, wait a minute now. We don't know that. We know the attack came from China, but we don't know that it was China that was doing it. It just simply means that that was the last place that it exited from was China. But now records have been uncovered that have actually shown that many countries, including the U.S., have a cyber program. And one of our next wars will probably be fought on the cyber battleground. Think about it. What would happen if the Internet, the television station, your cell phone, your infrastructure for your electricity, your water, all went down at the same time and were being controlled by someone else? That's scary to think about, isn't it?
We've seen the movies.
Yeah, exactly. And those movies, are really not that far off from being just Hollywood. It is a stern possibility something like that could happen. Now, of course, we're taking measures known in the SCADA world for trying to stop these things from happening. But it is also scary that I see quite often that we're not taking as much measures as we should be taking.
Just a final question. Should we be looking for an alternative for cloud computing, or that's the way to go, but we really need to be educated about all these safety concerns?
Okay. Let me put it to you this way. Let's first off describe cloud, all right? And why? What cloud do the average person mean? Now, I know you're from Malaysia, but I'm going to use a U.S. analogy here. if I plug my let's say hair dryer into an electrical outlet, I expect to get 110 volts. I expect to get 60 hertz from that. Where did it come from? Who generated it? I don't know. I don't really care. I don't care if it was wind. I don't care if it was coal. Now, there are certain individuals who might be greener than others, and they might care about that. But as a general rule, I don't really care. It makes sense for us to have one large generating plant, if you will, and everyone share in that. Well, that's basically what cloud has become. Cloud is going to be the next utility, if you will. We're going to be able to get our computing resources and buy those computing resources from, if you will, the lowest bidder. But we need to be sure that it's safe, that it's secure. Now, the next question is, well, Tim, how do we do that? One of the easiest ways to do it is to do a technique where you encrypt before you send it to the cloud, and you decrypt it when you get it out of the cloud. All right? This goes along with the trust no one. Then you are completely safe. If you have the only key and your data is locked up, well, then nothing can possibly go wrong. But then therein lies the problem. If any processing needs to be done on that, well, then we have to, I've got to share my key with somebody. Now you can see the Pandora's box starting to open. If I share the key with someone, are they going to do the right thing with it? Are they going to keep my data safe? All right. A long time ago, we were taught to trust someone based upon who we trusted. I tell in my classes a lot of times, when we were really little, we were told to trust someone based upon who our parents or guardians told us to trust. And I kiddingly say, okay, you could sit on Aunt Sally's lap, but for God's sakes, don't sit on Uncle Billy's lap. It's basically just who we trusted. We said, oh, Mom or Dad said that, so we need to also trust them. That's really the way the Internet works with the certificates that we use today. So if the certificates themselves all worked in a perfect world, that would work. But I'm sure that you've heard stories where certificates have been stolen, keys have been stolen. You know, there's a lot of work that really needs to be done before we can really feel safe in storing everything in the cloud, in my particular opinion.
All right. Well, it's been really insightful. Thank you for your time. I've been speaking to Tim Pierson, President for Data Century Inc. This is Tech Talk, BFM 89.9.
BFM 89.9, the business station.